On today's episode of the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast, we are featuring small business owner Hilary Sutton. You know I like to do these every month and help small business owners, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, whatever, troubleshoot an area that we're stuck. And Hilary reached out saying she needed a little bit of help with her sales funnels. So we were happy to oblige and had a great conversation about ways to take her varying priced products and move customers through the sales journey. Hilary is a writer, speaker, and consultant passionate about helping people spend their days in work that is wildly fulfilling. She is the host of the podcast Hustle and Grace and the author of several eBooks and courses, including More in Less, 21 Productivity Hacks for Creatives. Hilary has worked with clients ranging from Broadway shows to nonprofits large and small, agencies, creatives of all stripes, and consumer brands. Hilary currently lives in the DC metro area with her husband and very cute little baby. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Lots of real talk and lots of getting things done and helping streamline her business so that she can move forward. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by the First Click Community Facebook group. I love this community because we are all like-minded business owners trying to help each other navigate this crazy digital marketing world. And I'm here to support you through it. So make sure you join us. You can go to Facebook and search the First Click Community, and we'll see you there. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Hey, everybody, and I would like to welcome Hilary to the podcast today.
Hello.
So once a month, we bring on an entrepreneur or small business owner to kind of troubleshoot maybe somewhere where they're stuck or an issue they have, because if somebody is stuck somewhere, then a lot of people are stuck somewhere. So we want to, give an opportunity for people to get unstuck and also hopefully inspire you in something that maybe you didn't know you could be doing or could be doing better. So with that, Hilary, we introduced you earlier in the introduction, but if you just want to give a brief kind of statement about what your business is and what you do, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So basically, I have two sides to my work. One side is I'm a freelance content marketer and writer for hire. So I write a lot of direct response copy, blogs. I do some ghostwriting, content papers. It kind of runs the gamut. And I do those for a variety of clients. A lot of them are within marketing, HR, careers, nonprofit, faith, and the arts. So that's kind of where my freelance work lives. And then the other side is sort of this thought leadership that I've kind of built up around some sort of similar topics around careers, around pursuing not only a flourishing career, but a flourishing life. So I have a podcast called Hustle and Grace, where I explore that with high performing creatives. I interview them and kind of see, what have they done in their lives to cultivate really a flourishing life, not only a successful career. So that is the other piece. I have some products, some workshops that I've created, some intellectual property around freelancing, around blogging, basically for people who want sort of a non-traditional career. Like, how do you get that launched? How do you kind of step out of the 9-to-5 and into something that might bring you more fulfillment and more autonomy? So that's kind of the pairing of the two sides of my work.
That's awesome. And I think that's definitely something a lot of people are trying to do these days, right? Is get that balance of, I want to do something I'm super passionate about that I can make a living on that's going to support the personal life that I want.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So where are you stuck? What's your question?
Yeah. So over the past couple of years, I've built up kind of an online community, a little bit of a tribe. I have email subscribers, and I've created a few different products. They range widely in terms of price point. I have a couple of products that are available for $5 or $10. And then I have some more intensive courses that are around $150. And I feel like I don't really know where to start in terms of, okay, someone grabs something free off my website and then I have their email. How do I get them to go through the process of, me gaining trust with them and them buying from me? And also, like, what do I need to do in terms of kind of the products, what to offer when? Do I need to have, specific kind of like maps and directions in which I anticipate a customer going through the process? That's all still a little mystical to me.
Yeah, so sales funnels, right? Sales funnels are something that is completely overwhelming. And I think once you start to go down a path, it's like, I have to do all these steps and it can be kind of crazy. And it's definitely something we're working on streamlining and formalizing in my business as well. So I'm right with you there. It's a little bit crazy. But what I will say with when you're just getting started, I mean, as a content marketer, consistency is key. So even just starting with, they've signed up for this low cost product, or I shouldn't say low cost. Well, $5, $10 low cost product. And they get that value immediately from you and they're starting to get to know you. They get on your email list. Do you have like a regular email campaign then that they fall into?
Well, I've recently, in the past like 6 months, I started a welcome series.
Okay.
So I have that in the beginning. The first email kind of shares some of like the most popular blog posts that I have. It also shares a link to my podcast. And then the second email says like, hey, connect with me on social media. And then the third email, which I literally just started a couple of weeks ago, is a 10% off coupon to my store. So I have that. And then I also have a monthly newsletter. But in terms of a process of a set of emails that gets them to buy a certain thing, I don't have that.
Well, and your initial welcome series is great. But how often does your podcast come out?
Well, I do seasons. And so it comes out on a weekly basis when it's going on. And related, I think you probably relate to this. I had a baby last October, so I have a 9-month-old.
Oh, wow.
So I took time off, what I thought was just going to be like a 3-month maternity leave from the podcast. And it ended up being 5 or 6 months of a gap there. So I did a second season from March until last month, and then I'm going to launch it again in September. So I aspire to do it every week all year, but as kind of like a self-funded, self-produced kind of thing, you only have so much bandwidth, right?
Yeah, you got to give yourself some grace. Having a little one is no joke. And I have an 8 and a 10-year-old, and it's only been in the last couple of years where I can literally shove them in a corner. Sounds terrible. But they can entertain themselves. They can get their own food. They, and so and they go to school.
They're like self-sufficient a little bit.
It's a game changer. So no, good for you. And that's a lot of work. Okay. So one thing that I will say then is regular email. I like to email my list once a week when I'm not in a launch mode. And we do our podcast every week. And so that's the content that we put in there. But a new thing that ConvertKit, I don't know who you use for your email service provider.
I've been using MailChimp, but I'm interested in switching to ConvertKit. I've been looking into that.
And this is a strategy that they've pushed out there, which you could do on any platform, but it's basically kind of creating that evergreen email list. And so if you've got content on your podcast that's beneficial for people, regardless of if they find you today or if they found you 6 months ago or if they find you 6 months from now, then creating that email sequence where whenever they enter, they get those 3 welcome emails, and then they automatically start at the beginning of your email list. Now you said you have 2 seasons already recorded? And how many episodes in each season?
There was 18 in the first and 15 in the second.
Oh yeah. So now you've got like 3 to 6 months worth of content that you can just resubmit to people. Because when you start to hit people on a weekly basis, then they start to really get to know you, get to know your voice, understand you, hopefully engage and interact with you. So you can front load and batch all of that content. And then now if you start everybody at the beginning, because if it's from a few years or a few months back or a year back or what have you, it might be new information that they never saw in the first place. I think we tend to assume everybody sees everything we push out there. And so we worry about sharing it twice or 3 times.
Right.
But odds are they saw it and maybe didn't even remember, or maybe they saw it and were like, yeah, I wanted to listen to that, but they didn't. And now they're going to be thankful they get it again, or they just never saw it in the first place. So if you can create that kind of evergreen email funnel, then you've now when you start the next season, you just add on to it and you just keep going.
That's a really good idea. Let me ask you this. I think one thing that I've had a little bit of trepidation around is emailing too often and having unsubscribes. Because honestly, every time I send out my newsletter, I get a couple of unsubscribes, which is a little disheartening.
It is disheartening.
So, do you think that the people who exit, they should exit anyways? Like if they don't want emails frequently, then they're not going to buy from me ever anyways. So I might as well get them off.
I think there's a big piece to your email list being people that are engaging and interacting. And there's a few reasons behind that. One is that the higher your open rates, the higher your click rates, all of that is great for your ego. It's also great for your sales, but it's also great signal to send that your list is not spam, that you have people that are engaging, and it could potentially increase your deliverability into people's inboxes. The other piece is just like you said, if they unsubscribe, they're not going to buy from you anyway. And while it kind of makes you feel a little bit like, oh, like they don't like me or what I'm doing. If they don't like you and what you're doing, they're not your people, and you don't want to waste time on them anyway. Plus, depending on how many people are on your list, you're paying for somebody then that isn't even going to, make that money back for you.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So creating that consistency there would be great. And then the nice thing about those is you can just pause them and turn them off. So when you go into a launch mode, now people have been hearing from you for a while. You pause those regular weekly emails when you want to launch or promote a product, and then you go into whatever that launch sequence looks like.
Love that. So in terms of like what those emails would look like, so my podcast is mainly, the format is like this. I interview someone for maybe 25 or 30 minutes, and there's usually like some good nuggets and takeaways. And so at the end of the episode, I have a moment of grace and a hustle hack, like some way for people to implement something in their life right then that they can take away from that episode. So for the email content, would you kind of just do a little recap of the episode or pull out some of the takeaways from it? Like, what do you think?
Are you doing show notes on your website?
Yeah.
So then I wouldn't necessarily give them everything in the email, because you want them to head over to your website. You want them to listen to the podcast, right? I would tease them and kind of tell the story about like what, if it's the hustle hack or if it's the conversation that you're having, I would tease them about who the person is that's on there. So for example, when we send the email out about this podcast, it'll probably be something around, you hear the word funnels all the time, and does it just make you want to cringe? Like, I might give a little backstory about what funnels are and why they're so annoying. And then throw something out there that says, I had a great guest on my podcast today. She's a business owner just like you, struggling with funnels. And we break it down and give some tangible ways that she can implement some things today. So it's kind of that teaser, but giving the backstory of why they should even care about what we're talking about in that episode to begin with.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah. Okay. So then your other piece was how and when to sell and how to move them through into more expensive product, right?
Yeah.
So is your product kind of linked? Like, do they progress one into the next, or like how?
Not yet.
Okay.
I've just kind of, it's been a little bit more art than science, I should say, in terms of creating them. So I have probably the most accessible product is I created a 3-hour workshop on how to go freelance, like how to launch a freelance business and then how to turn it into like a finely tuned machine. And then I condensed that down to 90 minutes, and I have a recording of a webinar version of that. And so that kind of stands alone. Then I have like a 3-week course that is more detailed. And then I have like an editorial calendar cheat sheet, and I have like a 52-page ebook, and just different things that maybe at one point I used as a lead magnet. or things that I had already kind of created for something in person, and then I just took it online or whatever. So it hasn't been this thoughtfully, strategically created, store of products. It's
Okay.
it's a little hodgepodgey.
That's okay. If you were going to promote one as your signature product, what would you say would be the one that you would really want to drive the most amount of traffic to?
The 21-day e-course called Get Your Dream Off the Ground.
Okay. So what I would do is maybe take a look at your suite of offerings and maybe just focus on those and how that's going to drive to that end project. So that 21-day course, if that's ultimately where you want people to go, then having the elements in place prior to that are the ones you're going to want to focus on and feature. Because again, it's the same thing as when we niche down into a smaller, more targeted group of people, we tend to feel like we're going to lose our opportunity to make money, because if we're not hitting a lot of people, then whatever, right? But the same can go with your product offerings, because I'm with you. Like, we have had several different lead magnets and offerings, and a lot of them don't make sense anymore for where we are, because we finally really honed in on, we have a online course to teach you how to build your own website. And so now all of our lead magnets are related to that. And we've cut a bunch and we've removed a bunch. And some of them are still on our website, and some of them will still hopefully turn into money makers, but they're just there in case people find them. They're not what we're actually putting into a sales funnel, because it doesn't ultimately lead us to where we're trying to get people to end up. So the focus should always be on what is that end goal, and then everything surrounds that, right? So your podcast topics, if you're going into a launch, should be around what that ultimate end goal is. Your the lead magnets that you're trying to sell, the content that's in your email marketing, like everything should ultimately flow to that end goal. And is it open all the time, or do you have launch periods?
Right now, it is open all the time. I have done launches in the past.
Yeah. No, I'm in the middle of one. They're not fun.
They're heavy. They're time
heavy.
Intensive for sure.
Yep. So then the nice thing about that is it sounds like you could maybe create kind of that evergreen promo. And so even if it's open all the time, if you were to create maybe a quarterly bonus or something, just to give you more of a reason to talk about it, even though it's open all the time, you could just say, hey, we're offering this free bonus of whatever, or we're giving you a 10% discount whatever it is. Then that gives you the opportunity to turn to your list and switch into kind of that sales mode, as opposed to just the education mode. But if you're only doing it on a quarterly or whatever basis, then you're not going to hit them too hard.
Totally. That's great.
And overwhelm them.
Like, I could throw in like a coaching call or a 10% off code or something like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, or there's even like, if you have all these freebies or not freebies, if you have all these lower cost offerings, you could even throw one of those in as a bonus if it makes sense for your course, right? You've already created the content. Right. It's not going to cost you extra money to give it away because it's a PDF or a video you've already spent time doing, but that's added value.
I love that, because time is something that is really precious to me right now. So if I could give them something that is not going to take away time for me now, that's a win for sure. Yep.
And the other piece too is, don't feel afraid to do group coaching calls. So maybe one-on-one, like you're saying, one-on-one is hard. I don't know how many people you have in your community, but maybe it could even be, with this round, we're giving away, you'll get in the next 6 months 2 group coaching calls, and we set them up at certain times, and there's a minimum of 4 people on a call. So it's still really intimate, but then again, it's maximizing your time. So you don't have to do 15 or however many one-on-one calls. You can chunk them into groups. People still get extreme value from that, and almost better value, because when you're in a group of people hearing what other people say, sometimes it sparks things. A lot of the time it sparks things, questions you didn't even know to ask, or insight that you get from somebody else that makes sense. And with what you're teaching, it seems like that collaboration could be really key.
Totally. I love that idea.
And I would just say, there's people that teach funnels. I am not a funnel master. I just take pieces from here and there, test it out and see what works. If you're open all the time, that's great because you can test things all the time. Keep it simple and build from there. Otherwise, it just becomes huge and daunting. So I guess if I was to break it down, my main advice for you would be to really take a look at your product suite and figure out which ones kind of go together and almost create that bundle, move people through those projects and those products and ultimately leading towards the course. And then just make sure that your podcast is driving people to the course and that your maybe even if monthly feels good, even if you can just do it twice a month on your email list just to continue to feed them. Because the last thing you want to do is only reach out to your email list when you want to sell them something.
Right. Then they'll really tune out.
They'll really tune out. Yeah. And I'll say, I mean, I don't have a huge list in my business. We are in a launch mode right now, and I've been emailing my list quite a bit more than I normally do because we're just wrapping up a challenge. We're going into some webinars, and then, our cart closes here at the end of the month. And we haven't had a lot of unsubscribes. So because we've been nurturing them and we've been providing tons of value over the last 6 months, so it's been good, and we're learning, and our open rates are staying on par. So the first time you do it, you're going to learn, and then you just keep taking what you got and moving on.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Any other questions or thoughts you want to throw out there before we wrap this up?
No, I mean, I feel super motivated to revisit some of my past content to put it back in front of my audience. Even some new people who weren't around a year ago when I launched my podcast.
I think it's hard when you're in it. I mean, that's why people hire people like you in your freelance business, right? I have a very hard time writing for my business because I'm so in it. I tend to start like at step 5 when you really need to come back to step 1. And even when we do that for a living, it's really hard to do that for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
sometimes it's so hard to see when you're so close to something. It's hard to see what like the obvious next steps might be.
Exactly. Yeah. So simplify it, take it back a step, and I think you'll be awesome.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And we will put all of these thoughts and ideas in the show notes. And so you can find that at thefirstclick.net/podcast. But Hilary, if people want to find out more about you and your programs, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can find me at hilarysutton.com. 1 L in Hilary. My mom, when she named me, said there was no need for 2. So got 1 L in there. And awesome. I'm Hilary Sutton on Facebook and Twitter, and Hilary.Sutton on Instagram, unfortunately.
Oh, you can't win them all. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you putting yourself out there and allowing people to learn from kind of where you're at and where you're stuck.
Thank you so much, Sammy. Appreciate it.
Hey, we'll talk to you guys next week. I just want to say a huge thank you again to Hilary for joining us on this podcast. Resources and links to where you can find Hilary can be found at thefirstclick.net/podcast. We'll have all of our show notes keyed up there for you to get all the information you need. And as always, please make sure you rate and review us where you listen and subscribe so that you don't miss out on an episode. Till next week.